we are back. Joining us are four beautiful women to have our lovely panel discussion.
Yes, and I have to say we kind of already
We
started.
We had to stop because
We got too excited.
we got too excited. But joining us, like we said, this particular session is all about the different walks of life, generations of embracing equity in their own perspective, and therefore we have four beautiful women from four different walks of life joining us in studio. We have artist and entrepreneur Miss Shahira Young right here in this lovely dress. Good morning.
Good morning.
And next to her we have CEO and clinical psychologist at Counseling and Psychological Services Limited, Miss no stranger to the show, Miss Deshani Lopez. And on our other side, Sabrina, we have Shahidi Vasquez, who is a student at Galen University. And next to her, we have Miss Christy Castillo Almeida, who is the founder and executive chair at Autism Belize.
Good morning,
Beautiful ladies, different walks of life. Wonderful to be here with you all. It's Women's Month. It's all about embracing equity. You've all had your own experiences surrounding this particular topic. So I want to go around the room and just talk to us a little bit about yourself and what you think this particular month means to you. Just maybe like 2-3 sentences. Who wants to go first? All right, I'll start right here. Let's go with Deshane.
All right, so I am a mom. I am a friend, I'm a daughter, but most importantly, I'm a person that just loves to enjoy life, right? When I think about gender equity and I think about growing up, I think my mom is a modern mom. A lot of the things that I hear people talk about, I was fortunate that my mom was able to explain why there's differences and how we treat people differently based on their needs. So we were taught to fill a space and to know who we are. So for me, in terms of, while not all the environment will encourage or promote, I show up.
Wow, beautifully said. All right, Christy.
You show up. Very cool. For me, I am still trying to figure out who I am. I've lived in different countries. I've had a variety of different careers. And I learn from everyone, from every culture I've been in, whatever. And I think looking at this month now, what I'd encourage everyone to do is to sort of look into yourself and explore what your implicit biases are, how you interact with people, and most of all, try to figure out who you want to be. I still don't have the answer for that. But I think that's the big question. It's not about what other people expect of you or what other people want of you, but what truly makes you happy and what are your goals.
Wow.
Not easy questions.
No,
yeah.
you're not.
Well, for me, this is a really powerful month. This is a month where we have voice, because they used to make decisions for us. So this month here, we're supposed to show our unique style. When it comes, I speak for young women in general. When it comes to our financial independence, we need to be financial independent and know that, okay, I work for what I want and we're not depending on no men's, no husband, no boyfriend. We have our own money and we need to be unique and we need to use our voice.
Really interesting to hear all of you guys. But to me, I think this month particularly signifies just trying to change the culture in which we are right now. We should be fighting that every single day, but this month in particular is when we should have more discourse, when we should talk about it, try to embrace it a lot more, and recognize what is missing in our Belizean culture and what we as women who have something to say can bring in and do. And I think that's something that particularly means so much to me, because this is something I am extremely passionate about. I've grown up in a society where women have always kind of been subservient. They have had to take a step back and let others rise. They are the caretakers, the women behind the men, the women behind everybody. But who are we as women?
Yeah.
where is our individuality? And I think this is what this month signifies, our own individuality.
Wow.
I love the conversation so far. And in a lot of ways, I feel like what you guys were describing was the entire conversation that we will be having.
Yeah.
We're looking at women versus from then to now. And that's a really important conversation that I think we should be having, is what's the look of women from then to now? You spoke of your mother being a modern mom. What is a modern mom? That's my first question.
Well, for me, a modern mom, when I talk about that, is when I hear about traditional mom, so you talk about serving, right? My mom did that, but to an extent. And even for us, initially it was my mom and my dad, and then when my dad left, it was just my mom. And so she empowered us in terms of we do serve, but we also don't forget to serve ourselves. And so I call that modern because she allowed us to be present and to our voices be heard. So a lot of time people say, well, how do you show up and just talk? And well, in a house of, I live in a house of 6 women. So it had to be where we were encouraged to embrace our unique differences and still not feel different about each other. So we had different personalities, different attitudes, but we all were able to embrace, and that was the space that I grew up in. So for me, being modern is I'm able to do it both, and I don't feel I have to give up one for the other. I am a mom, I'm a wife, I'm also an entrepreneur. So I hold many roles, and there were times where it felt I had to be perfect in every different situations, and that was exhausting. And so it's also embracing rest. And so even that, I think my mom also has helped in take rest. You know, so it's not just this work, or only the household, is that balance. And so
Rest?
for me,
What is this? I do not know what that is.
so it's to be able to take time to slow down. I remember when the pandemic started, and I think in the month of May we were able to go back in office. And so I used to go in office, and I had a young baby at the time, and my mom would say, before you come home, stay outside, even if it's in the vehicle, just stay up for 5 minutes, relax, then come inside. And so she helped promote it a lot in terms of that balance of shifting from work life to home life. And so I think now I'm finally, this is the year where I say, really at a good space.
You got it down a little bit. It's so fun that you say that, because while your mom taught you all of that, I didn't realize what a patriarchal society was until maybe I stepped out of college. And I know that sounds very late in life, but I never knew that men had a footing at the table, because both my parents raised me to do you will do it. You want to put your mind to something, you will do it. You want to dig dirt for the rest of your life, okay, we're going to make that happen for you. And I said, like, I felt kind of tricked, because when I went out into the real world, it definitely wasn't like that. And I experienced like my first car crash of patriarchy when I had my first job, when I was seen as a young girl in a particular space that she not supposed to be there. She no know nothing about this. She 21 and she my boss? Absolutely not. And and that's the ageism conversation. But it definitely was this space where I went home after my first day, and I was really, really mad at my mom and my dad, because like, why you never warned me about this? And they said, they looked at me and they said, we gave you the tools to combat that. Use it. Yeah.
My first job was at the police department in this country, to age myself here. So right out of college.
Right.
Totally get what you're saying. I hope my mom is watching, because she doesn't get the concept of rest. I grew up with women who had to be like,
good work,
always doing at home,
yes.
And then she's at school, and my mom is the epitome of someone who brought work home. Literally, she was a principal, and we had girls that would get kicked out of their home because they were pregnant. They came to live with us. You know, they were in an abusive situation. My mom brought them home with us. She literally had that. So rest is like, woo, perfect. But challenges. With my family, we were never sheltered that way. We were out. We come from a family that you serve. So even though I was at like SESA, like private schools, whatever, we were supposed to go out in the community and help, and we were supposed to do things. And so my mom was very good about exposing the world to us. This is what happens. This is why this person is that. We had to change our phone number because you had some abusive dad that was calling to threaten my mom because she interfered in this family's life or whatever. So we weren't sheltered that way. But the women in my family, my mom, my aunts, my grandmother, they were big women. And so when I came in and I'm like, oh yes, I'm going to work, I totally met the resistance, the ageism, the wait, how old are you again? The what do you know? Whatever. I totally got that. But I just felt that I can take this on. And really couldn't. I mean, it really wasn't as easy as it sounds. But I had this sort of inflated sense of purpose and that, no, I deserve this seat at the table. And then you get there and you realize it really isn't that easy. You know, like it really isn't. Every step of the way, it doesn't get any easier from your first job to your fifth job. Even as you get older, there are still going to be people that will just look at you and talk down at you and say, oh, but you're pretty, or you're passionate, or like, I'm also smart. At times.
But you know that it comes back to the concept of rest, because it's also, I understand that. So Mom, I hope you're watching as well, because it's one of those things where it's not just, I've learned that I have to do that. I've learned that it's okay that I'm exhausted and I have to stop.
It's a self-care.
It's a self-care, right.
I think right here, there isn't really push to embrace self-care, to embrace mental health, and I think mental health is a part of this, because there are so many facets of our life that we need to take care of. And it's very interesting to hear you guys' experiences, because this is intersectionality. It's the discrimination that we all experience because of different factors that make up our identity. So our race, our ethnicity, our gender, and all of these things predispose us to a society that favors other people and puts us down. So I actually also grew up with women, with big women, but I think it's not so much that they were big women, they were just strong women, they were independent women, and in a society that kind of doesn't really appreciate that, they were seen to have strong characters. And I remember in my family, my grandmother and my mom, if they had to get something done, they weren't going to depend on no man to go get it for them. So they have to chop my yard, they have to fix something, they will do it themselves, because
and then that brings about the conversation of gender roles.
Exactly.
But the roles of genders are quickly shifting in our society, and we're talking about the women that raised us and the women that cared for us. And I always saw people like my grandfather and my dad as feminists, because it was never about you want clean and you want cook and you're going to be the one at home. It was, I'm going to teach you how to change this oil, because you're going to have to eventually figure that out for yourself. So as much as my mom was a big woman, she's fascinating and amazing, and she's a hard worker and everything, I don't know if she would have been able to, I would have been able to be raised in this context had it not been for my dad as a supportive partner.
And that's a big part of it. There's so many of us single moms out there. The dads aren't present. They're not stepping up. And so, yes, we have to go out there and find the jobs, whatever they are. We have to do that. But then that's the dream of the rest, because we still have to go home and fill this other role. Because there is no, that sharing is really hard, especially when you look at a society when there's so many of us single moms out there, you know, and that makes it really hard.
Well, I think you first start, maybe women's, right now I'm talking about women's in the 20s, 30s, 40s, when they were young, you were taught you have to go to school You have to get a job and be financial independent. And right now we're seeing women in those years are the ones that have this mental health, the depression, because they don't have the stuff that they that was their goal or intention to have. And that goes with the same thing with SMART goals. I mean, work hard, work smart, but not hard. And that all goes hand in hand with having a positive mindset. Where women, we have to be like water, fertile, calm. We have to find a safe space, and we have to focus on ourselves before we can focus on our children, on our peers.
As a woman in art and an entrepreneur, have you ever felt that your space or your field was dominated by a man?
Yeah, and I see it every day. I would paint on building, and men would pass by and say, "Why are you up there painting on the walls? Why are you up there on the building?" I know that when it comes to Belize, art is very blunt, but there's a lot that people need to know about art. It's about self-expression. It helps you heal. And when I was young, I didn't have a voice, but I find my voice through art. So I do different arts like impressionism, Fauvism, Cubism, many things that people don't know about. So, yeah.
You know, I think one of the most important conversations to be had this morning is the expectation of women. And as much as a lot of people don't want to admit it, women do understand that we bear that frustration. There's a universal idea that women are expected to act this way, especially if you're a mother. We spoke about rest. We're not allowed to rest as women. I'd like to really steer the conversation into expectations right now, because I think that when it comes to womanhood, we're expected to present ourselves in a certain way, to become selfless as mothers, not think about anyone but our children in certain instances. We exclude ourselves completely.
Yeah.
Can we start there?
Wow. I don't know why to bring me on this show. The expectations aren't just society. I think it's also just so intrinsic in us. You know, this is how we were raised, and
It's generational.
It's generational, and as much as, you know, we have parents or whatever saying, "Oh yes, go out and do this," still at the end of the day, you've got to be the mom. You have to do this. I gave an example. The last time I was on the show, they were presenting about women. I think they were introducing the month. And when they walked off, and I'm like, listen, why are we expecting this? One of my best friends, she's 40 something, never been married, never had kids. And she's one of the happiest persons I know. Not social media happy, but really happy. She
Realistically happy.
Genuinely. She travels on her own. She like, oh, I'm going to climb Machu Picchu. I'm going to the Taj Mahal. She's doing things and has a great career, enjoying her life. And one of the people walked off and she goes, but is she really happy?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, why are you questioning this? Is it the fact that she doesn't have kids, or she doesn't have, so a lot of it is, we are guilty of that.
Yeah.
I don't need the man to tell me what my expectations are. I think we're doing it to ourselves.
Generational thinking. So we have the perspective over here of motherhood. You're expected to be, as a woman, happy. Happiness comes with childbearing.
Yeah.
Can we talk about working? Anything else as it relates to expectations for women?
Well, I think my idea is we're in the middle. Even before we talk about this conversation, you guys had talked about dads, right? In my first, I guess, 12, 13 years, I lived with my dad, and I think he also played a role in terms of the things that I can do. And he reminded me of where I'm at. I'm a young black girl and a woman, and so that also contributes to where I fit in society and some of the challenges that I'll face, but also reminding me that I could handle those challenges. And so even with the rules, my father always wanted to teach me how to a vehicle and all of that. I just never had interest. So I must be honest that even though it was encouraged, I never really stood in the end, you know. And for most part of my life, I enjoyed being in the passenger side. But I took that as, that was my privilege, and I took it. But now, as a mom, as an entrepreneur as well, it's, what are some of my roles? And sometimes I feel like I would be failing at home because I'm working too hard. And I had that conversation with my husband, and one of the things that we have decided is he doesn't come home and help. So we changed that term. He's not helping. We live together. This is home. And so now, like, I used to do projects, and he will come and the whole house will be all different. But it was exhausting, right? Doing it all was exhausting. Running the home, working is exhausting. And so this time I had a project, and I waited till he come, and I said, we're going to do this together. And we rearranged the bedroom, but we did it together, and it felt much better than having to do it on my own. I reminded myself, hey, I have a husband, let's do this as a project together. So,
I like that Sabrina opened the dialogue with that particular question, and that Christy talked about, you know, her friend that doesn't have a kid and is happy. And I asked then, what does a successful woman look like? Because whenever we talk about women in society, if you are not childbearing and married, are you a woman? But then you also aren't allowed to have a big job and a CEO and have and own a career. Why is she doing that? So what is success as a woman for you?
I think success is your choice. You know, like you mentioned, you know, your friend, it wasn't really seen as her choice. It was seen as something that just happened to her. And so I think if what you define as success and you get it, you are successful. You don't have to have a lot of money. You don't need to be in another country. It can be what you want. And I think that's what feminism is. So if you want to choose to be a stay-at-home mom and that genuinely makes you happy, then good for you. That is what you want. That is what empowers you. And I think it's the choice of trying to get what you want. You have the liberty to attain it. And a lot of times our choices are limited as women.
Well, for me, success is promoting hope, be awareness. There are 50% of women right now. We need that. Those 50% of women right now need to be in each field, show that how we are capable of doing anything. Back in the days, there were only 5 jobs, and each woman had to fight for that job. Right now, there are so many of us. We can show what is success.
Do you think that it's easier for men to be themselves in society?
no.
No?
No, I don't think so.
Oh,
Really?
Okay.
I'd love to hear your
yes.
In sense of a way, yes, but we still have to look at the same side when it comes to men. They have their emotional. Sometimes we need to focus on their emotional aspect. So maybe they grow up and say, oh, I have to be the man of the house. I have to get the money, the finance at this age, at this time, so I can take care of my wife. So we have to look on that aspect also.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
And when we talk about success, for me, it's not the things that you have. I think if you could go home and sleep and feel contented, to be happy and enjoy the moment and enjoy life for what it is, I think that is what is success is. Things change, you fluctuate, you could change jobs, your life could change in a minute, but if you feel contented with self, I think that's success.
I'm with Deshane on that. I've had different careers, married for almost 20 years, have the child, and at the end of the day, when I felt most successful is when I can look in the mirror and say, I am happy with who I am at that point, right? At that point. That's honestly it. It wasn't about when I was making the most money or when I was a stay-at-home mom for years as well. But it's when I can look at myself in the mirror and think that I'm happy with who I am, I'm happy with where I am, and that I feel like I'm a good person.
I actually really like what you talked about, which is men's mental health, because I think that's also a part that kind of affects us. And the patriarchy affects everybody. And so that's something that we need to recognize. Men don't really have the opportunity to talk about their emotions, and it also goes back to the culture that everybody talked about. So we are raised to be hyper feminine, to talk about everything. Women are too emotional, but men aren't. They aren't granted the platform to talk about things, and that turns into something ugly sometimes, into violence, into things that hurt us instead of actually trying to communicate.
I love this conversation. we touched on Women's Month, and then we went into men's mental health. It's multifaceted. They always have to become. They always at the front.
But the team is embracing equity. And you know, we've been talking about things like equality for so long, and I do think that the word equity is what we need to embrace and to talk about, because like Shahidi rightfully mentioned, the patriarchy affects everybody. They didn't choose this society to tell them they have to be the dominant gender. They didn't choose that, but they were raised in it, and they have expectations to be in it.
Let's talk about expectations further then. And I definitely want to touch on experiences. Do you think that the experience of a woman varies from culture, ethnicity?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think so, and I think that's what equity, or the point of equity in this month is that we all start from a different point in life. We all have different factors that make us who we are. So your race, your gender, your ethnicity, your socioeconomic status, all of these things contribute to how successful you are in life. And yes, successful. And we need to give people the opportunity to be at different starting points, but with different resources, because not everybody is the same. And so it's more so, okay, well, men are here, they need a little bit of help, so let's put them there. But women are down here, so they need a lot more help, because systemically we are oppressed, and so we need to give them more for them to reach on par with men. And I think that's what equity is trying to aim for.
Yeah, equity and necessity. We're talking about culture, we're talking about economics, and we're talking about globally. Women's are really facing challenging when it comes to workspace. They say that, oh, you can't be a CEO because it's a male job, right? So they expect us to be soft and nurturing. No, we are independent. We can be strong. Actually, women are very strong because we can do the both at the same time. And that is something that we need to bring across an awareness in society right now.
I mean, you could teach men to do both at the same time too. If I have to go home and cook, then you have to wash up after me.
And that is the difference between the males and the females, and that's why this is a women's month, because we can do all of both.
I like that.
You know, sometimes though, and this is a very touchy topic, because when we look at gender equality and really asserting ourselves as a woman and showing that we can do all of these things, sometimes it allows a man to feel less than. And there are men that would say, you know, you guys stick in your lane and we'll do our thing. So is there any comments to that? I see you're smiling.
Well, I actually agree with that.
Okay.
In terms of, a lot of time we talk about independence and we go super independent. When we talk about independent and strong, we describe a masculine version of independence and masculinity. But if we could be strong and all of those things from a feminine perspective, so we don't have to play a man's role, and a man doesn't have to play a woman's role. But when we talk about equity, it's what you need in that particular point. So we can do all of those things without having it to do it the men way, and the men doesn't have to do it the women way. That's why rest and appreciating the cycles that women go through, and appreciating that we could still do those things without having to do it the men's way, because that's tiring, it's exhausting, right? And so I like.
So do you think that there's a misconception of what feminism is? Because a lot of us think that feminism is, I could do everything what a man could do, and I could also do the female's job. Or I could do better. So do you think that then we should be understanding how to embrace femininity?
Yes.
And understand where masculinity could seep in, but also still embrace what we bring to the table?
Yes, I think that is exactly it, right? Because if we're consistently wanting to do it, all the things that men do, even biologically, we're different, right? So when we try to fit in that space, it's not to say that we can't do those things, but we can do it differently, and that would be okay. So a lot of time we divert to want to do it the same way that men do it, but then that puts a toll on us, on our physical body as well, because we go in overdrive, trying to overexert in an environment where we could do it a woman way. We could run a company, we run homes, so we can do those things, but we appreciate who we are as women, our biology, and that makes us women, right?
Shahidi?
I think that goes hand in hand with what you mentioned, the implicit bias, because we need to realize sometimes we have internalized sexist ideas in our own mind.
Yes.
And so there's nothing wrong with the feminine. Feminine is okay. It is natural. It's there for a reason. And we need to embrace that. We don't have to be like men, but we want to be treated just
With
as important, respected, yes. And I think that it's also kind of important that we are welcomed in a space, and that it's not just, well, men can do this better, men can do that better, but we can also do it, and there's nothing wrong in that. And I think it's also a double standard sometimes for women to be able to do both, because
I want to challenge you though, and also Deshane, because when we walk into a space, in a space that is usually a male-dominated space, whether that be an office or a bar, and you want to look pretty, you're embracing your femininity, right? You wear your high heel shoes, you walk in with your beautiful dress, and you probably are the smartest person in that room. Now tell me, picture that scene, and you picture it at home too. You're walking in with that femininity, you're embracing that. How many of men do you think will actually listen to what you're saying?
Not many. And I can honestly say that I think it's gotten worse with social media, because everybody just wants you to objectify you.
Right.
That's all that you are, because all that they can see is your pictures. They don't want to hear your thoughts, what you have to say. But that's the toxic part of masculinity. And a lot of times you realize that toxic masculinity just stems from insecure men who feel threatened by your presence. And I think that is even more empowering, because that means that you are threatening and you have a space and you have a voice, and sometimes they just don't want to listen to that because they're scared of you.
Christy, I see you to make up your face this whole
I
time.
that because I just hope they could go right back and hear exactly that again. That was very, very important. But yes, you sound like
she
you
didn't make up her
moved.
face the whole time. I need to hear this.
My tongue here. Walk into that room.
Yes.
You're all decked out. You're feeling good about yourself.
Yes.
Flipping your hair, and you know they're not going to take you seriously. And then you have to start speaking up. And then you're aggressive. You're emotional. You're loud.
You're a mad woman.
Yes, exactly. You are all of these things. I think when we can stop having these conversations is when we stop talking about what's the men's role and what's the women's role, and how we don't have to appear like a man or whatever. Can we just talk about what's the work that needs to be done, what has to happen, and whether it is female, male, he, she, they, whatever it is, as long as we are allowed to do that role because we are capable of it, then I think then we can stop talking about all of this and having these months and these celebrations. And I like what you said, because Harvard has this study on implicit bias, and I'd encourage anybody to go there and just type it in, and there's a test, and you can put that you're from Belize or whatever, and then you have to do this, and they do the implicit bias for race, for gender, for disabilities. And I did it, and I'm thinking, I got a kid with a disability, I'm a woman, I can do this. And it really opened my eyes to the fact that I've still got all of these thoughts in me as well, and you hesitate when you have to press these keys and whatever. It really is eye-opening, and I think until we start to embrace that, for me it's not about who's negative or whatever. If there's negativity, let's address it. If there's toxicity, let's address it. If there's something that needs to be done, who is the best person to do it? It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be. And femininity doesn't have to be the heels or the tennis shoes. It doesn't have to be the makeup or the straight hair or the curly hair. It doesn't, for men, and I think that's what we have to teach
Ourselves.
Yeah. And kids going up, it's not about here, oh no, if I give him a Barbie doll, it'll be this, or I give him a G.I. Joe or whatever. It's let's be who we want to be.
I like that.
Sounds good.
And easier said than done. I get it, but
not reality.
Yeah.
We walk into a space and people see your gender, people see your ethnicity. Now, from my personal experience, it hasn't been with the male, it has been with the female. In terms of I walk in a space and the first thing that I notice is my color difference and my ethnicity. And unfortunately, people don't see, well, what you can do, what you're capable of. It's who are you from? Where are you from? What socioeconomic background are you coming from? And so again, that also put me at a disadvantage because I don't come from a high socioeconomic background. I come from a minority group, but that's what people see. They don't even pay attention to what I know or what I can do, what I, So while sometimes it's those big elephants in the room. Sometimes it's those, and we have to appreciate there is differences because I want you to see me. I am a woman. I am a Garfana. I'm proud and I'm strong. So I don't want you to not see that. But how can we create a space where that doesn't come as
Yeah.
right?
It's embracing you. You want them to embrace you the same way.
Yeah.
you said it. You said, oh, this sounds nice, but that's not reality. We gotta all knock our chest and say, let's make reality then. Okay. That's it. What I do advocating for persons with disabilities, what we want is pie in the sky. And if we just sit back and complain and think, oh, we're never gonna get there, nothing's gonna change. Right? We have to talk about it. We have to start taking the steps. I'm not saying we're gonna get there tomorrow. I'm not saying we might get there in my lifetime. But we aren't ever going to get there if we just say, oh, that's reality and we can't do anything about it.
All right. So because you said we're never going to get there in your lifetime, that's a generational cut. We're going to take the break. We'll be right back with more of this wonderful discussion. I kind of just want this panel continue for the rest of the day. But we need to take the break. We'll be right back with more Embracing Equity through Generations.